Levarme la moustache en la capucha. Siento pasanilo, mira tacatiki puletica. Siento pasanilo, mira tacatiki puletica. Siento pasanilo, mira tacatiki puletica. Siento pasanilo, mira tacatiki tacatiki. Siento pasanilo, mira tacatiki puletica. Siento pasanilo, mira tacatiki puletica. Siento pasanilo, mira tacatiki puletica. Sani levarme la moustache en la capucha.
What's going on? This is your man John Fortune, your host of the Frustrated Fan Sports Show, and today I'm going to talk about something that is a huge thing going on, especially with the last preseason game coming up. I'm going to talk about the things that has happened between the last preseason game and up until now. And there are 3 points that I'm really going to hit on, because there are 3 points that I feel is very important when it comes to what's going to happen this upcoming season. Ron Rivera's lack of naming his quarterback starter and why he hasn't done it, and at the same time, the future of some of these players on the franchise. So the first thing I'm going to start out is, because I guess, like always, I'm going to have to be the one that has to say it. Jamin Davis's play so far, even though we talk about certain things about the vanilla defenses and the vanilla offenses and things like that, there are still things you can see. And I have to even say something in regards to some of those people who actually sat up there and were vouching for Xavier Collins, because so far in the preseason, he has looked amazing. And we have to give credit to that. Now, again, at Tulsa, you didn't see him play the middle that often. And because you didn't see him play the middle that often, it was a thing where you wasn't certain if he was the right fit for Washington. Now, they went with Jamin Davis, even though he only had 1 year of experience playing the middle at Kentucky. But they went with him. Now, I'm not going to complain about him being drafted because he's already here. What is the problem is that we weren't expecting much in regards to the level of development that would be needed for this particular guy. Especially when there were guys out there that we all felt were guys that could have been drafted before him. Jamin Davis, he came up later in the draft process. People weren't really talking about him, but he started to show up later in the draft process. But he also didn't have the skills and stuff that some of the other players did. So as a person looking at it from the standpoint of, hey, this guy's a developmental guy, he may not get it in the first year, I get that. But for the people that all feel slightly disappointed in this, a lot of that disappointment that they're feeling is due to the fact that we feel we have to win now. And we have to. No matter how you look at it, we definitely have to. Because eventually, as we keep moving further and further away, or further and further into the future, there are a lot of young guys we're going to have to pay. And as we keep moving and moving and moving, it's going to be a problem to be able to retain a lot of this talent. So for us, we needed Jamin Davis to come in and make an immediate impact. So even if we don't do anything this year due to the schedule, next year we would be 100% ready to go. That doesn't mean that Jamin Davis won't be ready by next year, but there's a fear of what's going on, because you're currently talking about John Bostic has been in this defense for 2 years, and so far in the preseason, we've seen him do the exact same thing, which is come up and miss tackles. And he doesn't look any better in this system, even though they said that it's going to take a while for people to learn this system. It's hard for me to believe that Jamin Davis is going to get better, but he probably will. But I will say this. I 100% understand all the people who sit up there and say they aren't too happy with the picking of Jamin Davis, especially if you're looking at what has happened in the preseason games so far, and even what has happened in training camp and in practices. He doesn't look that good. And that's a very deflating thing, especially when everybody, myself included, felt that there were other guys on the board that they could have took instead of a project middle linebacker. But hey, that's part of what the problem is. So that's number one. Number two, this is why I hate when people talk about vanilla offenses and vanilla defenses in the preseason and not understand what vanilla actually means. When it comes to vanilla defenses and offenses, understand that they're talking about plays that the players feel comfortable with, that they can run and they don't really make that many mistakes. Now, I'm going to talk about Ryan Fitzpatrick. When people talk about Ryan Fitzpatrick is only running a vanilla defense, understand this. Even though it's vanilla, it's also the plays Ryan Fitzpatrick has told Scott Turner he's comfortable with. So, and a lot of you going to say, well, John, how do you know that? If you guys remember when Jim Zorn came here, because it was Jim Zorn and I also think it was Steve Spurrier, they all made it a point of saying this, and Jay Gruden said it too. They said that in the preseason, they normally have 10 plays or 20 to 25 plays that they give a quarterback. And those 20 to 20 and 15 of those plays or something like that, 15 of those plays are plays that the quarterback feels comfortable with, or that they've said they feel comfortable with those plays, or it's something similar that they used to have that they're okay with. Now understand this. If Ryan Fitzpatrick is looking like this on plays that he's supposed to be comfortable with, then what are you supposed to expect he look like for plays he's not that comfortable with? So that is what vanilla means. Vanilla is, oh, these are plays that this quarterback has said he can run and it's not a big deal. We've seen Ryan Fitzpatrick perform in the preseason and not perform that well. We've seen him throw a couple good passes here and there, but we've seen him make mistakes. We can say what we want to say, but we do all have to admit he doesn't look that efficient in this offense. And if Ryan Fitzpatrick is looking like that on plays he's chosen for himself, imagine when you go outside the realm of plays he's not comfortable with. That's what they mean when they talk about vanilla. These are plays specific to this quarterback who's made the point of saying he's comfortable with these plays. And again, like I said, if Ryan Fitzpatrick looks like this on plays that he's told Scott Turner he's comfortable with, we're going to have a very long season. A very, very long season. So that's number two. Number three, Ron Rivera's lack of support when it comes to picking his starting quarterback. Now, around league sources, around the league sources and everything that's going on, everybody knows that Ryan Fitzpatrick not being named the starter is just Ron being Ron. Everybody is already preparing for Ryan Fitzpatrick, including the Chargers. From my understanding, the Chargers are not playing their starters in the preseason because they're building everything up to face Washington week 1. Imagine that, a team that feels the need to not play any of their starters in the preseason to prepare for the week 1 game. And then we sit up, and like I said, we're talking about Ron Rivera not naming his starter, but it's the worst kept secret throughout the league. Everybody knows Ron Fitzpatrick is going to be the starter. And what has happened is that in a press conference, Ron was asked about Taylor Heinicke and Kyle Allen, and he interjected Ron Fitzpatrick into the discussion. Ron is trying his best to make it come off as though there's an actual quarterback competition when there's not. And the reason he's doing that is because if Ron Fitzpatrick fails, he now has to basically repeat what he said at the end of last season. And even what he had to say at the beginning of training camp and so forth and so on about not actually having a genuine and real quarterback competition. He now has to basically it's going to sound like repeat if Ron Fitzpatrick is a failure. And for some of you who don't understand Ron Fitzpatrick history, understand this. This man was benched in the bye week. But let me give you more context to that. He started 6 games at the beginning of the season last year. 6. The first game was a massive loss to the Patriots because that was the one where they were like, oh, Cam hasn't lost a step. Then they came back and they had a very bad loss to Buffalo. They followed that up by beating Jacksonville, and Ron Fitzpatrick had a very low passing yardage. Then they got blown out by Seattle because that was the 4th game of the season, and they were already talking about Russell Wilson being the league MVP because I think at that point he hadn't thrown an interception or something like that. Then that loss came right behind that loss. They blew out the 49ers. I think it was like 43-17. And then they blew out the Jets. 24-0. After 2 blowout wins, they go into the bye. They come out the bye, and Tua is now the starter. Understand this. This man accounted for 17 negative plays, 5 interceptions, and 12 sacks. So imagine if he'd have played longer in the season, how many more losses that Miami might have had. So when a lot of you are trying to understand the benefit of Ron Rivera naming a starter, I understand why he doesn't name a starter. Because again, if he sits up there and he hitches his wagon to Ron Fitzpatrick, and Ron Fitzpatrick fails mightily, he's going to have to basically repeat exactly what he said at the end of last season and into the following season, into training camp and all that, where he talked about he didn't have a real genuine quarterback competition, which everybody feels he didn't do again. He's basically repeating the same thing again. Last but not least, I'm going to talk about this and then I'm out of here. This last preseason game is something huge. We will see exactly what they're going to trim the roster down with this last preseason game. There's been talks about Peyton Barber no longer being on the team. There's been talks about Jared Patterson taking his place. there's a lot of things we have to talk about. When you look at it in reality, Jared Patterson technically is our best 3-down back. Now, he's not that good in short yardage when it comes to gaining that 1 yard, because again, you're talking about a smaller statured guy trying to gain 1 yard versus Peyton Barber, who's a little taller than him, getting 1 yard. Ron Rivera is going to have to really understand what he really wants when it comes to this and what he values more. Is he going to keep 10 offensive linemen? He said on multiple times that he wants to keep more linemen. He said that. Not only did he say that, he also made it very clear that it was important to have the amount of linemen that is needed due to the fact of the COVID protocols. So clearly he's on board with making sure that he has more linemen, which means there are going to be cuts other places. I hear people talking about linebacker. I hear people talking about safety, corner, all that type of stuff. I do feel that we may be walking into the season with 3 running backs, because as much as we may want Peyton Barber to be there, he's still a specialist. You know, and Ron Rivera likes guys who can do multiple things. If this upcoming game we see Jared Patterson doing more short yardage plays and things like that, and he's picking it up, we're going to see Peyton Barber off of this roster. No doubt about it. I think that in this upcoming game, they're gonna try Antonio Gibson at short yardage to see if he's getting it, and they're gonna try Jared Patterson at short yardage as well to see if he's getting it. I wouldn't be surprised if they don't have Peyton Barber in the game at all. And if he doesn't show up in the game at all, his time in Washington is over. But I also think that with this roster, we won't get any surprises. The only surprise I think will happen is Torrey McTyer. I think that he's played phenomenally. And I mean, even in the training camp, he was playing very well. I wasn't expecting for him to be this good coming off of the fact that he wasn't on the radar in the first place. But the fact that he is showing up, it's a very good thing. I do feel that this game will actually give us a clear picture of who's going to be on the roster and who's not going to be on the roster. And like I said, these are key things to pay attention to. 1, let's find out how far Jimmy Moreland plays in this game. If he plays pretty often, he's going to be on the roster. If he's not playing that often, he might be off the roster. Peyton Barber, same thing. If we don't see him in the game that much, and we see Antonio Gibson and Jared Patterson in that short distance stuff, Peyton Barber's time is done. Linebackers. If we see I guess you would call it the special teams linebackers on this defense, there's going to be some cutting that's going to have to happen there. And I do think that they're going to find out if certain guys can play the special teams, they're going to go with that. Also, I do see that some of the offensive linemen, depending upon how long they're in the game, that's who we're going to find out will not be on the roster. The guys who aren't playing and the guys who will be playing, but the guys who play for a very long time, those might be the guys that don't make it. We're going to really see what happens in this game. I'm going to give my observations after the game, and I'm going to actually do a roster rollout also. So with that being said, we'll see what's going to happen in this last game. We'll see if Ron does pick his starter after the game, and we'll see if he actually did do stuff. And we'll also see some of these players and if they're even worthy of being Washington football team members. Other than that, this is your man John Fortune, and this has been the Frustrated Fan Sports Show.